Perfect. Alrighty. Now I'll go and repeat that for the recording there. So calling this meeting to order at 5:02 p.m. For roll call, we've got Brandon Thomas, Alice Williams, Tommy Skaggs, Evelyn Roan, Jessica Quito, Becca Seeley, Brady Smith with ASCWU, Amber Hofer, Bjorn Pelmier, Joey Bryant, and Lila Gallagher. Perfect. Alrighty, so now I'm going to go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the agenda for today.
So moved.
Yeah.
Perfect. I see a motion from Evelyn. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Perfect. Alrighty. Was that Brady there? Or, oh, Brandon, sorry. The voices all start to blend together. Perfect. Alrighty. So with the agenda approved, I'll go ahead and move us over to approve the minutes from last week. Do we have a motion?
I'll motion that.
Perfect. Motion by Brandon. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Awesome. And second by Evelyn. So we'll move on to reports. I have no reports, so I'll go ahead and pass it on to our advisors.
At this point, I don't have any reports other than what's going to come up on the other agenda items. So I'll go ahead and defer for the moment.
Sounds like a plan. And next up, we have ASCWU.
Hey, good to see you all again. Apologize I wasn't able to make it to our last meeting, but as far as ASCW updates, just for your guys' information, Joseph Burke, who was the Director of Governmental Affairs, has stepped down from that role. And we are also seeking some legislative help in Olympia. So if you or anyone that you know of is interested in getting involved in the legislative process, advocating for Central to our legislators, feel free to either reach out to me or get them in contact with me. My email is ascwevp@cwu.edu. I'll put that in the chat just so everybody has it, but also I know Joey, Amber, most people here probably have a way of contacting me. So yeah, that will be it for my report. So I'll use my time.
Awesome. Thanks, Brady. And just a quick question about that role. Is that just till the end of the legislative session, or is that like a year-round academic year sort of role?
So specifically like lobbying and going to Olympia, that is to the end of the legislative session, just because of the nature of that. You can't really lobby to legislators when they're not in session. But that role would probably stay on for the rest of the academic year, just to aid in other support with various activities relating to governmental affairs.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and move forward from reports. Or does anyone have any questions for Brady on that, or got his contact info? Awesome. We'll go ahead and move forward to communications received. It looks like we have some from our CFO. I'll go ahead and let Joey get into that.
Yep. And again, I apologize not sending this earlier and giving it to Jessica to send, but I sent it out in the email to you all earlier. This is what I alluded to earlier. We got the official written response from Joel Clucking, our CFO and Senior Vice President. You can take a look at it. Really, it's the exact recommendation that the committee put forward at the end of fall quarter to make the exceptions for this fiscal year to the S&A policy, specifically that we had made the recommendation to adjust the policy so that any unspent S&A allocations at the end of each fiscal year will be returned to the S&A reserves instead of at the end of the 4-year cycle, as the policy dictates. That will go into effect this fiscal year. Additionally, the other adjustment and recommendation for the sake of the record was to adjust the policy so that salary savings are returned the S&A reserve for vacant positions that are vacant after 1 month. And so each month the vacancy at the end of that rolls back instead of what is currently in the policy of the 6 consecutive months. And so Joel had reviewed those and approved those recommendations. And so those have officially gone into effect for the remainder of this fiscal year.
Awesome. Yeah, glad to hear it. Yeah, props to the committee, all the work that went into that. With that in mind, do we have any other communications received not on the agenda? No, perfect. I'll go ahead and move into our first call for public comment. So cue Jeopardy music. Alrighty, go for it, Bjorn.
I never know where to ask these questions, but I honestly don't remember if I asked something about because we addressed last meeting, I think, that excuse me, some areas had gotten basically a notification from their overseers to spending freeze for the remainder of the year. And I don't remember if we discussed, were we going to like send out a memo or something like to address that, or I honestly don't remember. I'm sorry.
No, so are you okay if I jump in, Judy, as a refresher?
Oh yeah, go for it. Mhm.
No, so really where we had left it, Bjorn, at least based on the minutes and the notes, was really that there wouldn't be necessarily a memo, but as you all are taking into consideration, if there are supplemental requests coming from those base funding units, that you all will take that into consideration on any of those requests if they were told not to spend as a functional piece. Because we didn't, that's why it was also, there wasn't a set like, hey, you will get this or you will have any definitive piece. So really for you all as a committee to be mindful of, I know those who chimed in and watched last week's meeting or last meeting 2 weeks ago are aware of that. And I've shared it with some as well in the sense of if there are requests coming forward, but it was really for us in practice to be mindful of that. It's not a guarantee on anything, but no, there was no memo. And I will say in a minute before we jump into supplemental requests, I'm going to give a brief overview because this is the first round of them as we go into that. So.
Perfect. Sounds like a plan. Do we have any more public comments, questions, concerns, announcements? Please of rage. Okay. Awesome. Going once, going twice, and we're going to go ahead and move into new business. So we have some supplemental requests. First up, we have the Student Appreciation Spring Concert presented by Campus Activities. Joey, do we want to go into sort of whether we're going to be voting the same night before or after the presentation?
Yep. So let me give a brief for those of you, just as this is a refresher from training, and especially those of you new to the committee this year, we haven't had supplemental. Even last year, and I'm stretching my mind, I don't think we had any supplemental because we had frozen them. Now we may have had one exception. So let me give you the overview of the process as a reminder and what to expect, and then I'll talk about those two requests. So supplemental requests, again, as you all know from our policy, base funded units, so those who receive base funding are able to come in to ask for funding for things that were outside of what was foreseen in the budget aspect, or if there are impacts or changes that weren't part of the base funding that had come up when they requested for the 4 years. The request and the process is, and these three requests will follow this. You all will typically hear the request. They have up to 10 minutes for presentation. I kind of keep track on the side, and so if they get close, I'll normally send a little reminder in the chat. And then we get to the 10-minute, we kind of have to cut it off. Because there's 10 minutes for presentation. Immediately after the presentation of the request, you all as the committee have 10 minutes to ask questions of the presenter. The focus of that is to ask questions to gather information. And I say that because the next stage is then when we deliberate amongst the committee. And so there's 10-minute presentation, 10-minute Q&A. Normally, what happens next is that at our next meeting, you all will deliberate and have up to 10 minutes to discuss the request, talk about reasons you all are in favor or not in favor of the request. And that's when it's up to you all to make a motion. And we can talk about that in just a minute. Within there, the motions themselves can be either motion to approve the funding in its full amount, motion to approve, but with a different amount and give some justification. You can say essentially motion to table or to deny, but also if there is no motion, the request dies because no one moved forward at that point. The process for us then after that is we make a recommendation. And so you all, again, similar to what we just talked about, any recommendations that we have for the funding technically go to Joel as the CFO to make sure like, yep, we have the financial capacity. This isn't going to make us go bankrupt, et cetera. When it gets to a certain threshold, which is over $25,000, those fall within the purview of the Board of Trustees to approve when that kind of area. Again, nothing changes on our process, just so you know, the administration, there can be a slightly different based on the dollar figure. The reason that we will typically hear the request and do Q&A 1 week and then vote the next week is that it provides the ability for, if there is any public comment, people in support or people coming in, hey, I'm concerned, don't think you should fund this for these various reasons. It provides it open that way. However, as you'll see with the two tonight, presenters do have the ability to request if we hear the request and vote on it in the same evening. You all would have to, essentially, someone would have to make a motion to do that because it deviates from our policies. Those can be for reasons such as, and again, I'll kind of allow them as their presentation to touch on why tonight, but it could be things based on timing. It could be things based on purchasing. It could be things based on, again, just the ability to get to Board of Trustees. Various aspects may come up to where it necessitates the need to move it forward in a faster process than we normally would. If that were to be the case, you all would vote on that. It's separate from hearing the presentation here and asking the questions. Someone would then say, hey, I would like to amend the agenda to put these under the comment. It would really be still new business because it's not really old, but we would move it down below. The voting would be after all the supplemental requests. You all, whoever's making the motion, could choose, I would like to move it as a new subsection B, supplemental request voting, or move it after the base funding annual report reviews, whatever the motion is within that. It does get interesting when we're hearing it and voting the same night. To keep in mind, the Q&A portion right after the presentation is solely for the presenters or to ask the advisors informational pieces. Once we get to deliberation, that is really you all as the committee talking amongst yourselves, not really intended for the presenters they can be here, right? It's a public meeting, but that's for you all to discuss amongst yourselves. Ideally, you've already asked all the questions you need during the Q&A part to determine all of that. So, and I'm looking around. That's roughly what the process is. I'm wearing two hats, obviously, as the advisor, but also our funds manager is not here. And so we'll give you all kind of the feedback on where we are financially as things come up as requested, so I can answer questions as it relates to that. These requests supplemental come from our S&A reserve. As you all remember, the start of the year, we did not set a supplemental budget, also with the intent that really supplemental is for unexpected, high level or emergency things. In the past, they would set a budget of 200 or 300,000 because we're not hearing requests in the same way that it was before, and it was open to orgs and clubs is also part of why there's not a budget set. But we still are coming from our S&A reserve budget. Any of this would be coming out of that. I think that was the high level overview of the process. Before we jump into the requests themselves, are there questions about the process from you all? Because I want to make sure I answer them now before we're in them. I don't want to take away time from the Q&A of any of the presentations.
Yeah, go for it, Brady.
So just to clarify, if we were to vote on any of these requests, we would first have to motion to move them into a different section on the agenda.
So to clarify, we wouldn't move the presentation because that's here. Essentially what you would do is do a motion, and you can do it after all three requests if you want, or after each one individually. But essentially what you would do is motion to add an agenda item, again, wherever you say, which is supplemental requests, voting or deliberation, that's on there.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Jerry.
So do we want to collectively decide if we're going to do them? Because if we want to do them all at the end, would that be one motion, or will we motion individually after hearing the reports? Do you know what I mean? Like, would it be individual per funding request, or could we kind of say we're going to do them all, like all of the approval motions, as one chunk at the end? Can we motion that? motion?
It would be up to whoever's making the motion. I mean, I would recommend that you hear the request for why they're wanting it. So again, because we need rationale, because essentially what we're doing is circumvent. I mean, we're deviating from our process, and also does prevent the ability for public comment if someone were to hear and want to give that. So what we would do is we would hear in campus activities up first. After campus activities gives their presentation, we do the Q&A. Someone could choose to motion then to add campus activities, or if no one does, someone could still, after we hear the last one from KCWU, could motion just to put both of them on there. It's up to whoever's making the motion. So you could do it individually. You could do one at the end. You could still do one at the end that's only for one of them. Again, it's up to whoever's doing the motioning, if that answers. But we would want to hear their request for the reason why, so you have the rationale.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, just checking how all the motions, I can tell it's gonna get a little complicated, very exciting. Yeah, okay, sounds great. So with that in mind, are we just gonna get started with the first presentation then, with campus activities? Perfect.
I'd say yes, unless there's any other questions about process from any of the committee members.
Yeah, any questions, comments, concerns? Alrighty, in campus activities, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Amber Hofer Shithe. I am the director of SLICE, so Student Leadership Involvement and Community Engagement. Can I share my screen? I do have a brief presentation, and it says the host disabled the participant screen sharing. So that's just a quick question if I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah, of course. I think, is that Jessica who has screen share? Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. We're trying to set it up right now. I was nodding, but I was trying to also do that at the same time.
I will talk in the meantime, just in case. So you heard Joey alluding to Tommy and I kind of working together on this. And so you see that in the agenda. And so some of this might make sense as Tommy and I both talk about it in full transparency. We've been talking about this for months, and our presentation we put together in the last day when we were notified we could come. So bear with us on the, if we overlap on some stuff. And so student appreciation. So I don't know if any of you all went to Wild Fest. I'm doing the wrong one here. That was the wrong screen. Did you see student appreciation?
We did, yeah.
Okay. It looked weird on my end. So you see student appreciation.
Yep, we see the student appreciation outside of the building.
Okay, my thing got weird because I'm on two screens, and so thank you. Student appreciation, also known as Wildfest, is end of the year huge celebration, and so Tommy and I have been talking about opportunities to expand that for the students, and especially since we are post-COVID. And so a quick overview: campus activities is one of the functional areas and offices within SLICE. And so currently the assistant director role is vacant, which is why I'm here presenting to you all. And I want to give you a little bit of information, so why we're looking at this. So moving out of COVID, last year there were still some kind of somewhere in the middle restrictions. Y'all might have remembered like trying to figure out like how to do individually wrapped food things. And so as we're kind of moving out of this phase of COVID, we really want to have a larger celebration in the spring. And we've been having conversations about bringing some kind of headliner performer. And so I'll let Tommy talk about those individuals, but that's kind of the idea is we want to make this bigger and better to expand the whole vision. And so one of the other things we've been talking about is how do we collectively as a campus fund this, because some of these larger entertainers cost anywhere between $30,000 and like Lizzo, Tommy, I think you said it was like $1 million. Lizzo's not coming to Ellensburg. And we want to have some kind of really large concert series. And so last year we had student appreciation, we had inflatables. Through the campus activities budget, we spent about $15,000 between the food, inflatables, and other activities. We plan on still doing those. And in this idea of expanding from local bands and local artists, we want to bring in some kind of headliner. And so we're asking for a $10,000 supplemental request to help supplement the costs of it ultimately. And you'll see that Tommy also has asked for some funding. And we've also been talking with student government to see if there's an opportunity to use some of the student government money and really make this an event for students, by students, to really cap the year off before the seniors graduate. And so just a couple of the numbers. Last year, 1,100 students went to Wildfest. We know 1,300 got ice cream and sliders. It's hard to keep track of the exact numbers because people were coming and going, but we had 1,100 students do the waivers, and then we had 1,300 have sliders and ice cream. And so I know some of y'all probably had both, so take that number with a grain of salt. Then the after party really was a ton of fun, and there was almost 300 students who went to that, and that was up in the ballroom. And so that was sponsored by ASCW, and really what we're trying to do is say, okay, so what's next? Can we do it this year? And if so, how do we put the money in order to make that happen for students? And so that's pretty much the extent of my section of the presentation, because I know Tommy is going to talk as well. But the one thing I wanted to leave you with as you're kind of looking at just a couple of the pictures from last year is to bring a headliner. It's not setting up the same stage that we would have that we had last year. We have to think about additional safety and security of additional event staff. We have to make sure all of their contracts are in place. We're able to accommodate their riders. And so it's a really complicated process. The stage and equipment sometimes costs more money. And so we really appreciate and hope to get additional money to supplement that. So that is my presentation. Here's a couple of the inflatables just for fun from last year. Questions?
Can I add, this isn't a question, this is me wearing a different hat now. So they did get all sent via email, the supplemental request. So I did want to give a brief just clarification. That's a slight change if you're reading the request. Is the request in there, this is actually a supplemental request. The salary saving piece is actually for that position comes out of the sub fee, not the S&A fee. And so I want to make sure if you're looking at the supplemental request form, it has a different part, but this is truly a supplemental request from our reserve on that. So just to clarify that part.
Well, that's a good question, because initially I was asking for the salary savings, and I found out recently that we can't do that. So
that actually goes to the CFO because he oversees the sub, not you all.
And so I think either way, we're hoping to get $10,000 is my long story short, to help kind of fund this.
Yeah, go for it, Brandon.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead. So I really like this idea of expanding on an event that is, for numbers of CWU attendance, pretty big event. It was packed a lot of the time, and that's really good. Do you have any projections on like how many more people you're trying to get to attend this event, or?
It's a good question. We don't have specific numbers because it really depends on the venue. And so let's say we do it in the Cirque. If we were to do it in the ballrooms, we could fit 1,200 people. That's max capacity. We'd probably really only do 1,100. But we would be looking at doing like a part 1 and a part 2 of student appreciation. So part 1 would still be outside on the Bardo lawn, and then part 2 would be the larger concert. And so that might be in the ballrooms. If we find a place outdoors, like at the rec field, it would cost a ton more money because we would need to have generators and have a stage physically made, but that would increase the cost, but it could also increase the attendance. And so we've also talked about, okay, what does this year look like and what could next year look like if we wanted to expand that? Like Tommy, you're allowed to, I'm going to share my space with Tommy too, if that's possible.
I didn't want to, am I allowed to talk, Joey, during this portion? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest point that Amber is making is that it's really how we had the activities and the inflatables and everything that happened on Bardo lawn, and then a concert happening at the same time. The proposal is to keep them to separate a little bit, and we would have the actual concert would have a range of days, and then I could talk a little bit more during my presentation about the actual day, but it would be a floating day sometime between May 19th through June 1st, where we would have the concert, and that would be dependent on artists' availability. Yeah, that's little bit more context there.
No, thanks, Tommy. And it's so hard because we're working together on this and we're both asking for money for the same thing. And so that's why I'm like, let's share space if we can.
And Amber's funding is like more of a general funding to fund the event for a lot of the logistics, where my request more focuses on bringing in a larger named artist, like a more notable artist. So that's the differentiation, even though it's about the same event.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys for the clarification. Oh yeah, another one, Brandon.
Yeah, I was also going to say thank you for the clarification on that. And just to follow up on that elaboration, so we haven't exactly, obviously this is going to be an ongoing progress, and this initial funding is just to make sure that you have the means to realize your idea. So are there any top ideas that you want to make sure you accomplish?
I think for Wildfest, I think we just want to make it, I will speak for myself. When we've talked about a large concert, I think that we're wanting students to find value and see like someone that they're hearing on the radio and see on TikTok and, you know, all of the other cool trendy things that are happening. And so I think the goal is really just to elevate this and take it to the next level. But knowing it's a stepping stone, and I don't want to get too much into Tommy's presentation either. And so, but I think that's, for me, I would say that's my goal. And I know Tommy's gonna share info too, so.
Yeah, I mean, to add a little context too. Oh, go for it, Bjorn. Go for it.
No, go ahead and add context. Mine's a separate question.
Okay, sounds good. I was able to go to the Wild Fest that happened before COVID lockdown and everything, and they got to have Hobo Johnson there, and that was just super cool. Yeah, so that it's totally like it's got a lot of momentum to it, and I just wanted to add a little context. But yeah, go on. Go for it, Bjorn.
I just wanted to check because we have the data from fiscal year 22, but I was wondering what your what the balances of all the involved funded areas are working at right now. I guess that would be campus activities and KCWU. ASCWU is not involved quite yet, is my understanding. Okay, yeah, I was just wondering what those budgets were looking at, and whether this whether this is like expected to exceed those budgets, and that's why it's in a supplemental.
That's a good question. So I can tell you for campus activities, right now, I think that we are projected for about 150 out of our 170. And that extra 20,000, so we had exceeded our balance last year. And so that 20,000 we were kind of looking at that as like a break-even point. It also could change depending on our student staffing, because our students aren't required to work 20 hours a week. But for example, with family weekends, since a lot of our students work a full 8-hour days and will probably work the 20 hours, we plan on spending the entire campus activities budget this year.
And then just to KCWU does not have any money set aside for programming for this. So so that would be, we don't have the budget for programming.
Okay. I apologize if I sound like a budget hawk here. I promise I don't want to be that guy. Is it possible to do a balance transfer from like goods and services into programming or something like that? Is there money in that budget, or is it just not enough in the whole KCWU? I totally understand if the latter is the case.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess it would like technically be possible. Joey, is that?
So I'll answer it partially. I don't have your current budget in front of me, Tommy, so I can't answer if you all are projected to spend all your goods and services currently. So that may be a key part. If you're projected to spend it all, I think that answers Aaron's question, because then you wouldn't have it to move. technically speaking, you would have to come and ask this S&A committee if you were to say, hey, you all gave us goods and services to be used on equipment and technical things, but I would like to move it and use it as programming. You could, but would have to get the approval of the committee. So there's a technical part, but I don't know if that is, if you all have money available in your goods and services you're not planning to spend.
Right. And just historically, like last year, it was funded out of campus activities as well. So it was a campus, like we helped out with WildFest, but it was it's a campus activities event.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Now I'll add one other thing, because you mentioned ASCW, and we don't have formal ASCW money, but one of the things we've been talking about, ASCW, the Senate specifically, has been looking to reinfuse Sweeney Day and have some CWU specific traditions. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out, is how do we help highlight ASCW if they're able to offer some money, but that hasn't been solidified. But really the intent is for it to be for students, by students, something that you all really vibe with and benefit from.
Just kind of jump in there on the ASCW note. This really, any collaboration seeking came from the Student Senate, which while technically has access in theory to the board of directors budget, does have their own separate budget, and that has its only wages in that budget, and so those will be spent. And like Amber talked about, they're trying to bring back Sweezy Day, which is an old tradition that ended about 50 years ago, to kind of add on to this Student Appreciation Week, more of a sense. And so most of ASCW's funding, any significant funding, would be going towards that day's activities, with limited possibility of funding the concert, but nothing solidified since the board of directors hasn't really been involved in this conversation from the ASCW perspective. And the board of directors budget is where that money would have to come from, just because the all the other budgets just don't have for them. So
Thanks, Brady. So long story short, none of that is guaranteed. Thanks, Brady.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification there. What's up, Joey?
I don't want to interrupt if there's questions, but I realize there's a key point I forgot to say with supplemental requests, so I'll say it now and won't count against. We still have 2 minutes left with questions. So the other part with supplemental that I should have mentioned is if you all, whatever amount you all approve, if that amount is not spent, it rolls back to the reserve. So I think that's a key part just to be aware of. If you all approve an amount and whatever is being asked for comes in at a lower amount, or there are other funding sources that are able to help pay for those things, the S&A money rolls back to the reserve.
Yeah, go for it, Bjorn.
This is, I apologize for being overly worried all the time, but last year campus activities got burned by like insurance costs or unexpected insurance costs. You're prepared for that, right? You're prepared for the insurance company. Okay, thank you. They scare me, insurance companies.
They scare me too sometimes, but we did, it's a great question. And the insurance actually went up another $1,500 this year. But it has to do with the way we name events, which is why we really lead with student appreciation, because that's what it is and that's what our insurance covers. So that's one of the pieces to it, but great question. We have projected that. We actually just paid that bill, so.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or points of discussion? Yeah, go for it, Alice.
Do you think do you think this would have a good return on our investment from student engagement, getting more involved here on campus? Because post-COVID, I'm a club leader here, and it's really hard to get students to even get out here right now. It's hard to get them to stay. I get 10, 15 people for a meeting, and then next week I get 2. Do you think we're gonna see, I'm seeing a lot of, our department's having issues with, we're worried we're gonna have a max exodus of students just leaving. Do you think this return is worthwhile?
Alice, I think that's a really insightful thing. Like, we're experiencing that across all clubs, and like, how do we engage differently? How do we help students find meaning and purpose and connection with the institution? It's hard to say, right? It's hard to say, yes, by going to this concert, a student will find more meaning and purpose, or feel more connected to being a Wildcat or the Wildcat community. And what I think that I will say is we want to create this space for students, and that's why we're wanting to mix it up a little bit, so that, like, how do we get people out of their rooms, and how do we get them from, feeling more comfortable behind a screen, if not a larger name? And I saw Joey's thing, but I think it's a good question. I wish I had a better answer, but I think that that's our reality. And so we'll keep inviting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alrighty, I believe it's a matter of seconds left in our Q&A here, but any last little questions here? Yeah, go for it, Bjorn.
I guess a question for Joey. What are we looking at in the supplemental fund? Because I'm sorry if that was said earlier, I completely missed it.
So I'm gonna save that question, Bjorn, for when we potentially are deliberating within it. We haven't set a supplemental budget, essentially, is the answer again. It's from our revenue, from our reserves, but I'll save that as if you all move into deliberation tonight. So.
I yield my time. I don't know if I'm supposed to do that or not.
I think you can move on to the next one, Judy.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you're gonna be like timer's up or yeah, perfect. Okay, great. So with that, all that information in mind, we're gonna go ahead and move forward to the club travel budget. My mouth isn't capable of my brain sometimes, I swear. The club travel budget with the club senate.
Can I request for Tommy to go next? If that, I'm also presenting for clubs, but I don't know if that's possible. Just so, because our topical content is similar.
I will entertain a motion to edit the agenda. So I can't, but I can entertain it.
Yeah, I'll motion that. Yeah.
Alrighty, motion by
Second.
Brandon, second by Bjorn. Perfect. Alrighty, yeah, you're good to go. Yep. So we'll go ahead and hear from KCWU with Tommy.
All right, thank you very much. So my name is Tommy Skaggs. I'm the general manager of 88 The Berg, KCWU. I'm also an alum. I graduated here in 2006, and I was heavily involved with the radio station then. So it's fun to be back on campus. Thank you, Amber, for providing a great overview of what Student Appreciation Day was. It was, a lot of fun, borrowed lawn, a lot of food, inflatables, activities. And it is a long-standing transition. We talked about Hobo Johnson. That's something that was remembered from, prior years. And, there's been big artists in the past. That whole event, that cost was for that whole event, including inflatables, food, it was just over $30,000, and about $20,000 of that was associated with the concert. A big chunk of that was for the professionally run sound. So just for context for this year, there's been a lot of interest from students, student groups, a lot of student feedback that we've received is to get more notable artists on campus. We had a lot of fun last year, having student performers, alumni performers, people connected to the community. But people have asked to restart the larger bands. And as I mentioned during the Q&A section of Amber's presentation, the music portion of the event is floating right now. So all of those days activities will happen during the day, and then the concert will happen sometime between May 19th through June 1st. And a lot of that's depending on artist availability and scheduling. Just sort of for some general tiers for different artists. The ask that we're doing today is 24,500. We work with an agency, so if we decide to go with a large name artist, we would work with an agent who does all of the logistics. So we don't interact with the artist directly. We operate through a third party. Their 3 tiers are 40,000 and below, 40,000 to 100,000, and 100,000 and above. So when we're thinking about an artist selection, about who we're going to bring to campus, we really want to think about the up and coming artists who there's going to be some general buzz that's going to get students excited, and to have them come to campus. I mean, years ago we had Macklemore on campus, and he was a huge, he was an up and coming name, and now he's a huge name. So we're looking for somebody in that kind of magic point in their career. So the way that the breakdown of the 24,500 would be an artist up to $20,000. That would be the artist fee. 10% automatically goes to the agent fee to do all the logistics. And then I also would like to have local talent as well. So we would have, depending if the artist allows it, they may, if they allow to have local performances, we would have a few either student artists or Ellensburg artists open up for them, and that would leave a budget for $2,500 to pay those students as well. So just thinking about the timeline of this request, actually one for the differentiation. Amber's request for the 10,000 is more, can we have a concert? That's a lot of the staging, the tech, the logistics of that. My request is to bring the bigger named talent. So, but we're at a point, like right now, the reason why we're asking that this is voted on tonight is there's so many things to think about when putting a concert of this caliber together. We got to think about the artist negotiation, the artist selection. We got to figure out who's available and who's willing to come to Ellensburg. And then once we get all that figured out, we have to figure out contracting, tech requirements. We even have to, promote the event, logistics, security, and figuring out facilities. So, we're us sitting here on February 16th, and we're looking for an event that's just a couple months away. It's going to be a run. It's going to be a lot of quick activity happening really quickly. And if we're not able to vote on, if it's not approved tonight, this is probably something that we won't have the timing to do moving forward. And that's not meant to scare or intimidate or anything like that. It's just the truth. If we can't get funding secured for this, we would have to figure out other options. So with that, I've been working with ASCWU Senate, people from there. I've been working closely with Amber. I've been also coordinating with Robbie about some logistics from last year. And I've also been talking to our contracting office. So some of the conversations have started just in case if we get approved for funding, there's a plan to move forward. So with that, my presentation is over.
Perfect. Thank you, Tommy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just gonna do our little Q&A. Ask away. Yeah, go for it, Brandon.
Just to, you might have said this already, just to make sure, I'm looking at your concert expense estimates, and it says the cost shown on the Excel sheet does not include staffing wages. Are you still trying to use the funds for the staffing wages and it's just not on the sheet?
So the for the staffing wages like that, like especially for like a Wild Fest, like even in the budget last year, like I had all hands on deck from like 88 won the Berg there, and that wasn't reflected in that budget either. It's just something that it's different departments are, you know, gonna have to, you know, like if we're going to have this, it's going to be a team effort from a lot of different groups. And so if somebody can't, you know, donate money to go towards the concert, maybe they could have some of their staff help coordinate the event or help with different aspects of it. So those costs just weren't outlined in this Excel. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I had a question to kind of add on to that.
Nice.
Part of your publicity, is that to go towards like volunteer recruitment, things like that as well?
Yeah, so the publicity would be, and like the marketing would be working with primarily Hype, and to get the word out for this event. And it would be a lot of the materials, like even like the printing costs, or anything we would need to do to get the word out for the event. And that would be working directly with Lola and her shop in the Publicity Center and Hype.
Oh yeah, we love the publicity packages.
Yeah.
Are you going to be doing volunteer recruitment with that, or mostly working with different departments to get them to kind of volunteer?
Is that okay if I recognize Lola to speak on that behalf?
Fair enough. Yeah, go for it.
Typically, an event like that is first uses probably paid event staff, like, you know, students who are, for example, already working in the Berg, you know, maybe some campus activities folks, and volunteers for a concert I'm not sure what that would look like, to be honest. It might be something that's more on the outside, but usually there are opportunities for people to be involved in some way.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we'll go ahead and move to Brandon and then Brady.
All right. Just to follow up on the publicity, when would students expect to see any information about this event?
There would be like, so we would first have to identify, like if we decided to go with a larger artist, we would have to identify their availability of when they'd be able to come to campus. Once that contract is in place and written, and it's, you know, set in at least paper form, we would be able to immediately start. A lot of depending on how much publicity and how much pushing out we could do as part of the contracting process as well, because we could write in, you know, interviews, photos, things like that. But this concert is for students only. It's only for students, no community, nobody outside. It's just for students. So it would be a lot of internal promotion. So yeah, once we have identified that, we would be able to start the promotions process to get people involved.
Sounds great. And yeah, go for it, Brady.
This isn't a question. I'm kind of just offering more insight into where ASU's partnership kind of goes in here. Like you pointed out, like the staffing, where student employees can come in. Again, it's not necessarily guaranteed because I haven't had a firm date to float with the staff, but these kinds of costs and things is really where ASCW can kind of step in partnership, like we do with many of our base funded areas. ASCW, we have a large student staff, we have a large presence with the student body, and so that's kind of where a really easy partnership comes in. And so there are concerns about, you know, what student staff are really going to be working this. Do we have the capacity on this type of events? Well, I can't guarantee anything because I haven't actually been able to float it, but like in the past with Wild Fest, this is really kind of where ASCW can step in and offer some support. Guaranteed, but yeah, so hope that kind of helps answer some questions about student staffing and that type of stuff.
That's perfect. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, go for it, Brandon.
Sorry for my personal bombardment of questions, but I've noticed that you are also requesting or receiving an additional $20,000 in outside funding. is the Excel sheet accounting for that as well, or are those funds going towards something else?
That's approximately how much we would need to get it to pull a show off. Like last year, for the Wild Fest last year, just the sound, just this was about $13,000 for the sound alone. Depending on what location we have it here, we would it'd be plus or minus that, and also depending on who the artist is, they may require more or less tech. I think my initial fee, the $24,500 for the artist, and then an additional $20,000 would be from outside sources, including this would also include like Amber's $10,000 ask if that gets approved. Those would be areas to be able to pull off a successful show of this type.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Do we have any more points, any questions, comments, concerns? Yeah, go for it, Brendan.
So earlier you mentioned that you said it's if you decide to go for a bigger headliner. If you decide not to, what are you planning to do with these funds?
Well, yeah. So hypothetically, like this is so we could go two ways with this. If this funding gets approved, we'll be pursuing a headliner act. If for any reason this funding is denied, what we'll do is we're still going to put on a show, but it would be with local artists. So it's like this. My proposal is pretty much asking, do we want to see, really good up and coming talent, like notable talent that students are going to be excited about? Or do we still want to put on a fun show, but just have local artists? It's like, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So if this gets approved, if this $24,500, we'll be pursuing an artist with a notable name to come to campus.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. And that was a great question.
Alrighty, it looks like Joe just said in chat here, we have 2 minutes remaining of Q&A. So any last questions, thoughts? And then Brady's also asking if we can make motions during Q&A or if we need to wait until after.
You can definitely make a motion anytime you want. Brady, if you all are feeling like you have enough information to make a motion, then feel free, anyone.
I'm entertaining them, so.
I'll go ahead and move to add to the agenda under new business, subsection C, supplemental request voting for Student Appreciation Spring Concert, campus activities, and Student Appreciation Spring Concert, KCW.
Alrighty, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll go ahead and second that.
Perfect. We got a second from Brandon. Do I pause for discussion, Joey, or?
You can ask if there's any discussion. If not, seeing none, you can just move to the vote. But yeah.
Sounds good. Pausing for discussion. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move. Oh, go ahead. Go for it, Bjorn.
My understanding is that the Club Senate one is not a topic of urgency, and so we're leaving that until after we possibly vote on this, right?
I'll add, not that it's not a sense of urgency. There wasn't a request, but also that one, because it's 30,000, has a higher level of administrative.
Oh, right.
The sense Board of Trustees is meeting right now, which would not get to them. So that, therefore, while yes, it is probably still urgent, and I will let Amber and Becca speak to that. It wasn't requested just because we know that's still going to take longer.
Okay. I would tentatively caution against breaking procedure. I want this to succeed, but I also try to adhere to procedure in this case. I know that we did it last year at one point for something that hadn't really been planned until relatively close to when it had to be done. Joey, did you end up getting like a slap on the wrist for that or anything like that? Did anyone come to yell at you?
No, and the reality is the only response we get back is more the intent of the process is to provide the ability for public comment, especially if it's something that might be controversial or individuals might have some opposition to. And so we did not get any response or concern or frustration with when that had happened. Yeah.
I certainly can't see that this would be particularly controversial.
What was it, 1,100 students went last time? Go for it, Brandon.
Just to, this is addressing Bjorn's concern. Are there any other concerns aside from procedure? Because I also would like this to succeed, and I think the proven success of last year is kind of helping in my motivation to entertain this motion of deciding on it today.
If it makes you guys feel better too, the Student Senate has fished to students from a variety of different areas. If this is something that they are interested in, and time after time, students come back to the Senate and say, this is something that we want. So I don't think there's a lot of feedback or negative feedback or reason to be concerned. I mean, at the end of the day, our elected officials have gone out and sought student feedback on this, and they've got nothing but positive feedback. And I think that carries a lot of weight. That this is not just something that, no offense to Tommy or Amber, but administration officials are just thinking of providing for students. This is something that students really want, and have told them, I know, and told our student government that this is something that they want. So I'll leave that there. But
And I'll provide a little clarification. To the best of my knowledge, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but the only reason it didn't happen in the couple of years prior to last was just because of COVID restriction lockdown. It was just kind of on pause. So yeah, I would definitely, yeah, it's got some traction here for sure.
Well, I certainly don't claim to be the voice of the student body, but given it doesn't seem to be controversial, I certainly wouldn't oppose voting on it now. I just realized though, do we have to set a supplemental budget before we vote on this, or can we do that like after and factor this in, or because I don't know that one.
No, because essentially we didn't set a supplemental budget, meaning again, anything we'd be coming from is coming directly from the reserves. So we still need to be mindful of that. But essentially there was not a supplemental budget for the year. So any funding we approve is coming directly from the reserves.
Okay, makes sense. Gotcha.
Alrighty, so do you have any more points of discussion, or are we all good to move it forward into voting? Alrighty, seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and move us into voting. Perfect, so everyone in favor, go ahead and raise a hand virtually with a little emoji or physically, up to you. Alrighty, looks like, yep, alrighty, so we got, is that 4? Perfect, all right. And then all opposed? Alrighty, and I believe the motion passes, sorry, excuse me, been a long day. Perfect, so that makes so Joey, do we vote for both of their, like both request approvals, or are we voting individually? Probably should have clarified that, my bad.
The request, I mean, the motion was for both of them, so that's just one vote.
Okay, perfect. That's what I was going off of, and then I went, wait. Okay, perfect. Alrighty. So then the funding for both the spring concert and the musical artist fee, both funding passes. So,
Sorry,
Not,
to clarify.
they're put on the agenda to vote and discuss
oh,
on.
oh,
Yep, the motion was to add them to the agenda as the item. Coming up. Yep,
oh,
yep.
got
I
lost.
now understand your question. Yes, we'd have to vote on those individually, but the motion that was being voted on was to add
Right.
those two requests as a voting item. Did you say section C, I think, on there, Brady, if I remember?
Yes.
So they'll come after the annual report reviews.
Okay, perfect. Okay, my bad. Got a little scrambled in there. Alrighty, so now they've been added to the agenda item under new business section C. Perfect. Alrighty. So then, since we moved the musical artist up, so then we're going to go ahead and move forward to the club travel presentation with ICA.
Awesome. Hello, long time no see. Changing hats now in the spirit of things. So I'm going to share my screen here. And so again, I'm the director of SLICE, and one of the areas we oversee is all things clubs. And so the RSO budget is what we're here to talk about today. You might see it listed as like club travel, but it's all RSO as a whole. And so can you all see my screen with the colorful things? Okay. Becca, do you want to do a quick introduction? Because I also have one of our team members who oversees clubs specifically.
Yes, thank you, Amber. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. This is my first time seeing this process and this kind of meeting, so bear with me. But my name is Becca Seeley. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Club and Engagement Coordinator for SLICE, so my role is to oversee student organizations at Central. And more specifically, part of my role is to advise the Student Funds Council. So the Student Funds Council is a group of student volunteers who are club leaders who have volunteered their time to review the funding requests requested by clubs and organizations. So I just put together this slide just to give y'all an idea of the scope of what we're working with and what we've done so far this year. So as of right now, we have 98 active registered student organizations. That number is only going to increase as the year goes on. We have about 5 clubs registered in the process of registering right now, and I anticipate more clubs registering in the spring. We have over 1,000 registered club members. Now, these are just the folks who are registered as members of the club in the roster in presence. So there are probably a lot more students out there who are involved in one way or another in the clubs and organizations on campus. And just to clarify, this funding is specifically for the general body of RSOs. So sport club and ESC organizations are not included in this just because they do have their own separate funding, but I won't get into that too much, but just so you know that this includes the general body of registered student organizations. So far this year, the Funds Council has seen 56 requests. That includes requests, we did an early fall funding request process for events that happened in the first half of fall quarter, and then all of the requests that have been seen in fall quarter and so far in winter quarter. Over $121,000 has been requested overall within that 56 requests. And it's a struggle because our annual base funding is only about $90,000. And a lot of that has to go, part of that has to go to some of our programs that we put on in our club services. So our project, and then a lot of the requests from the fall include events and trips and travel that happen in the spring. So it's just kind of difficult for us to exactly see how much we have. So that's where we're working out with that.
Let me dive in here, Becca.
Yes, please.
Okay. I want to share a couple things because we have more slides for you. One of the points of clarification I want to make in our presentation. So we have all of these student organizations, and this is specifically to serve these student organizations. Now, of this, one of the changes that we made this year was we were trying to find a way to give club members more access to funds. So historically, they have been allowed to request up to $2,000 a year, and that would include travel, events, anything like that. So if you have 50 club members and your club can only get up to $2,000 per year, and it's not guaranteed because we don't have $90,000 wouldn't supplement 98 clubs at $2,000 per year. So what we did this past year is we separated the two, looking at some of the numbers and what we currently do. So clubs can request up to $2,000 per year for event support, club materials, whether that's recruitment materials or something for a fun event, like, or an entertainer bringing in someone for a workshop, or they can request up to $500 per person for travel, because we know that a lot of these conferences and things that students are going to cost more money. Now, what we have found last year is, since we had COVID, there was a lot of restrictions around vaccine requirements, and a lot of our students weren't traveling, and they weren't asking for money because they weren't doing events. And so you'll see in our financials, we had a fund balance last year because we didn't have as much engagement from our club. So this year we've gone on the complete other side, and everyone's submitting requests. And so it's a good problem for us to have. And it adds some challenges for us because we're running out of money. So what we're asking for is $30,000 from our previous fund balance. And so that's the supplemental request that we're asking. We technically, it shows in the line item, but that's what we're asking for, is that $30,000. Now this number, it's still hard for us to anticipate if this is going to be a perfect break even. The other thing I want to note in our funds council is that these students that vote and decide on who gets money, they have a rubric and they talk about the club like purpose and read and go through each of the requests. But it's still hard because it doesn't always match up. Like we have, $50,000 worth of requests and $30,000 left. And so Becca, I'll pass it back to you if you want to talk a little bit about some of the requests and some of the trips and events that we have awarded.
Yeah, so club travel funding is something that I really enjoy being able to help students get. So in this past year alone, we've had 12 students travel to a physics conference. We have students we have the cosplay club traveling to SakuraCon, so they'll get a chance to compete and really show off their skills that they're doing within their club. Those are just two examples. A lot of times these travel requests are for students to go to a conference that's specific to not only their club, but also like their academic program that's really important for professional development. And because the travel requests have exceeded the amount available, it's been really hard for the Funds Council to deliberate on these, because it's not a matter of merit, because everybody who is requesting these funds is going to get a really important individualized experience out of that, and it's really challenging for them to disseminate these funds equitably, because it's hard for one student to have an experience, but then other students can't. So so far we've been able to award students 90 students to club travel funding. So we've those 90 students, kind of depending on which club they were with, anywhere up to $500, or to support their registration, their airfare or transportation costs, lodging so that they have somewhere safe to stay while they're traveling and visiting a conference. And also we like to give funds for meals so that students don't have to starve while they're at a conference and traveling. So those are the four things that we would cover, the expenses that we would cover for travel. So we're pretty strict on those. We don't allow anything other than those. But registration costs for students can be upwards of like $500 for a student. So that being said, we've had to make a lot of difficult decisions this year. So just to give you guys an idea of the scope of the impact on this, unfortunately, you have the numbers right in front of you. You can see that 56 students were included in the amount of requests that were denied by Funds Council. Over $30,000 was requested, and there was that far exceeded the amount available. So they had to make some really difficult decisions. So, and they will have to continue to make decisions, not only the rest of this quarter, but also the entirety of spring quarter. They made a lot of those decisions based on having availability for funds local to campus to have events that any student can go to. So it's become really difficult for them and really challenging. And it's a really individualized experience. So I just think it's really important for students to be able to have an outlet to be able to get that individualized experience for their professional development. So thank you. I don't know, Amber, did you want to add anything else to that?
No, the only add that I'll put on here is we have 8 more council meetings for the rest of the year. And so one of the reasons, and I went to one of the meetings where they denied a lot of the requests in this 34,000, and the student council was really conflicted because they're like, do we spend the rest of the 12,000-ish dollars that we have left, or do we hold on to it and give students in the spring quarter another option? And so that's really where us as a base funded unit, we're like, we've got to ask for more money so that we can tell the students who are impacted if they have the opportunity to reapply and resubmit for funds. And I think that is all of our presentation. And we are happy to talk through questions.
Yeah, go for it, Bjorn.
The first quick question I had was, do you have any policy like with S&A that you have to like approve it 1 week before? That would make, okay, so it would be function. I'm seeing nods. So
Actually,
it would
not necessarily, actually, to clarify. So the requests are seen at the Funds Council meeting, and then based on the deliberations, based on the volume of requests, Funds Council can either motion to approve them right there, or they can table them for the next meeting or deny them. So they can be approved at the meeting that they're.
So I think I want to clarify the question, because I think I was also assuming your question, if you want to finish your question, Bjorn, because I didn't know if you meant they could submit it at least a week in advance, or what. I thought you were talking about the submission. So
I was just wondering, because there's 8 meetings left, right? I just wasn't sure if there were any other time constraints that made it closer to 7 meetings or whatever to submit.
Yeah.
I mean, the time constraints are definitely there. We do have, because of the volume of requests, there's a pretty strict timeline and deadline for when the requests can be reviewed. So for example, for each meeting, if you're a club and you want your request to be reviewed at a meeting, you have to submit 1 week prior to that meeting. And the reason for that is so that we have time to gather all of the requests, check off all the I's and T's and all that, and make sure that they're allowable expenses so that we can have time to prepare to bring them to the Funds Council and get everything organized.
Okay, that makes sense.
Only other time constraint I will add is a lot of students, like, their trips don't always perfectly align. Like, some students find out they can go to a conference and like they need the money in 3 weeks, you know? And so that's the only time constraint, is depending on what they're wanting to travel or do their event.
Okay. I had another question, but right. I'm checking the annual financial report here.
Mm-hmm.
Can someone read it to me? Because I'm looking at the fund balance at the bottom. There's about 15,000 difference between what it was. It looks like 15,000 extra on this one, but I may be reading it wrong. I have demonstrated an inability to read these, so.
You are reading it correctly, Bjorn. So that was last year. So last year, fiscal 22, and I think that went with what Amber and Becca had shared. They ended the year with 15,000 left, again, because we had a lot of travel pieces that weren't coming forward. The other part, because I think this is what's also throwing you off, is you'll see at the bottom the fund balances. The fund balance coming from the year before that 90,000 was also due to COVID restrictions, where actually travel was and most programming was frozen. And so you'll see that right now the year started, and if you look in this fiscal year, fiscal 23, the beginning fund balance was 105 before. Now, again, with the piece, that is all supposed to set to roll back into the reserve, because that was unspent from the past 2 years due to those COVID and programming and travel restrictions. Does that help to understand what you're looking at?
Okay, so it's like 2 years of rollover.
Yeah, sorry, I probably confused you, because on my budget report, I see that coming in as the fund balance starting this year, and so I just assumed 21 was put to 22 and so on and so forth. So of the stuff allocated, or the funds allocated last year, yes, it would be 15,000, but 30 is what we're asking for based on our overall fund balance.
Okay. Final question until I think of another one. Can you send us the presentation you gave? Because I those figures seem like useful to have.
Yeah.
And I guess to clarify, all of the presentation materials are asked of the presenters to send, so we have them available for whatever purposes. But yes, we will make sure that those get shared with you, Bjorn, and others.
Alrighty, awesome. Do we have any more questions for Slice? I am entertaining motions at this time. Yeah, go for it, Bjorn.
This is actually another question. I have a lot of questions all the time. You're sitting with about 12,000 right now. About how much has been requested per meeting?
Like the average per meeting.
Yeah, about.
Becca's probably got the specific numbers in front of her. Before Becca does that, one thing I will say is we did our first request starting in the summer last year because a lot of clubs they gave us that feedback the year before, like they started the fall and they felt like they were already behind because they couldn't ask for money. And so Becca, if you want to start with the summer request, because I think we did the first one like July, August, and give some numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as an average, I did not prepare that, so thank you for asking that. But so the ones in the summer add up to. So the ones from the summer add up to. Sorry, 1 second. 8,000, roughly around 10,000, and then I have each meeting from the fall right in front of me. And so there were 5 meetings in the fall. First one was $946. Second meeting was $3,598. Third meeting was $1,104. Fourth meeting was $4,961. And then fifth meeting of fall was $3,289. And then we've had three meetings so far this year. Did you want to hear, or this quarter?
Y'all see the jump.
Yeah. So this quarter, here, wait for it. Our first Funds Council meeting of winter quarter had $37,679 worth of requests. The meeting on the 26th had one of those requests tabled. So the meeting on the 26th saw $35,076. And then the meeting on the 9th saw $12,392. And then the meeting for next week is projected at about 9,000. So clubs are asking for a lot. They need a lot.
Yeah.
They need materials to do their stuff. They need professional development opportunities. So there's a lot of them. There's almost 100 just in our area, and that's going to keep growing. So.
Is spring usually a big time for travel requests?
Yes,
yep.
Very much so. A lot, at least from what I remember last year, a lot of conferences take place in the spring, in April and May. So yes.
I also think some of that jump is club members starting to realize they could ask for money because there was no supplemental option for them to go to S&A. And so it's been really interesting to even see like club advisors submitting on behalf of their club members because they can't do the S&A supplemental requests if they're not fees funded. Any other questions for us? Thoughts, comments?
Perfect. Seeing none, do we want to entertain a motion to vote on this during today's agenda, or leaving all those details up to y'all, of course?
Well, I think I'd add with this one, Judy, again, they didn't request for this one at this meeting. Again, because the dollar figure has to go up higher. So you all still could make a motion, but otherwise it would be voted on, it would be deliberated and voted on at our next S&A meeting.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Yeah, go for it.
Sorry. Joey, how long would it take for us to get the BOT approval? Because is there a way for me to request for it to be, for you all to consider to vote on it tonight? Because I'm worried that it's going to add more and more time,
Yeah.
like our next funds.
You could, here's the issue with the BOT approval is it goes up to Joel and the president. They have the ability potentially to request from BOT to have a meeting separate from their regular quarterly meeting. If they don't request it, or if the BOT says no, then it wouldn't come until their spring meeting. I'm hoping we have some ability with the administration that they may allow the board will allow the administration to make some of these decisions without having to go to the full BOT, but it still has to go to the executive leadership team. So.
Awesome. With that in mind, go for it, Bjorn.
Dear executive leadership team, I'm sorry I'm asking this, but hypothetically, would it be possible for, okay, if if Club Senate submitted 2 supplemental requests of 15,000 each, like if they did one this week and one 2 weeks from now, does that have to go up to the BOT because it's under 25K?
It's dependent on what you all approve. If you all were to approve a request for whatever amount, the hard part is it would have to be multiple supplemental requests that you all are approving at different levels, which may, I would say, and probably should flag some attention from above on like, hey, why are you having 5 or 6 of the same requests just under the threshold?
Yeah, it would only be 2 if you put it at 15K. Yeah. But yes, I totally understand the flagging that. Yeah.
Well, and I
When's the
wonder.
next BOT meeting? I'm sorry. Well,
Sorry.
official scheduled one, that is.
April, maybe?
What was the question, Bjorn?
When's the official BOT scheduled meeting? Assuming that they don't schedule a special one.
The next one, because again, there's one right now. The next one would be in May.
Okay. At the rate I'm sorry, this is another question. 2 minutes are technically up. At the rate you're going, you would run out of the 12K by May, right? That's a very, very yes. Okay. All right.
And what I was going to share is, I think that a great starting point, and I didn't know the $25,000 limit, and I apologize. But I think a good starting point, if it was possible, or if you all decided to amend it for this week, like we could see how 24,000 goes. And then if that's not working, we could come back and request additional funds if that was appropriate. But yeah, I don't know what to do with that BOT level in there, but I understand it.
Okay, go for it, Bjorn.
I'm no lawyer, but if we were to amend this to 24,000, and so that we could vote on it this time, if we so agreed. If we were to move it to 24,000, and then you came back with a request to keep rollover of 6,000, I guess, would be the remaining. Would it be okay if that trips a BOD flag? Because it probably would, as Joey said.
Can I provide a piece? I wouldn't have them change their request. And this is not a recommendation. This is me giving you advice on procedure. You all have the ability to choose to hear the request and recommend funding at whatever level. So you could recommend to fund at 24,000. And so essentially the request is heard, it's funded at 24,000, which would be under that threshold. If ICA RSO then still felt the need, like, hey, we have now gone through that money, they could come back with an additional supplemental request, but it would give some amount and to see, is that request being met? Is that meeting the need? Are they getting more requests coming in? Something along those lines. But they wouldn't necessarily, and I wouldn't recommend that they alter their request. You all would just take that into consideration for deliberation and potentially on the amount that you recommend moving forward.
Yeah, go for it, Brady.
bringing this up because it kind of seems like our conversation is moving to, we want to make sure clubs have funding as soon as possible. And so I understand that S&A supplemental is only available to base funded units. But from what it sounds like over the year that I have been here in ASCW, that at least once upon a time, clubs and orgs used to be able to come to us as a committee and ask us for additional funding directly, but that's no longer the case. Is that a rule that we set, or is that a rule that the administration set? Because I understand that with new president comes new policy changes. So any guidance there would be appreciated.
So I'm going to say two things. One, before I answer your question, Brady, I do want to make sure, because I was about to type this and I figure I'll just verbally say, we are definitely well over time on the Q&A. Also, we have moved, in my opinion, probably outside of Q&A discussion and into other discussion, whether that be deliberation. It almost sounds like we're deliberating on maybe a motion that hasn't been made yet, on whether or not to deliberate and vote on this tonight. So want to say that. But to answer your question outside of that, it could be of what you're talking about. ASCW, our club process and things was different in previous years. Now, this was many years ago. There also was different funding pieces under ASCW that did provide them some ability to fund some of these individual travel pieces. What has happened over the years is trying to really coordinate them into one specific process and area. So students or organizations weren't having to go to 5 or 6 different entities to request funding. That it really was streamlined and it was consistent, and that everyone had access and knew of it. I think that's what you're referencing and talking about, Brady, is the previous process. But I would recommend with this that either someone make a motion, or we really should move into the next agenda items.
For sure. We'll go ahead and wrap up quote unquote Q&A here with Bjorn and then Alice.
I just had a quick also response to Brady's question. The other thing that S&A did implement in, God, I want to say 2021. In 2021, S&A implemented the thing where only base funded areas could request supplemental funding just for the year. And I think that was extended in 2022. That's my vague memory. I call it the Weir-Grimm Amendment because that was Brandon's idea and it stuck, I think.
This is not a question, but just to clarify, that was a 1 year, but then the policy was actually updated. So it is a permanent move that took place last year.
Yep, go for it, Alice.
I always forget the rules under Robert's rules. Can I make a motion to entertain Miss Amber for their $24,000 request so we can vote on that this evening?
Yeah, so which part of the agenda did you want to move that to, Joey?
I was thinking at least after, probably after C, like what we've done before.
I would probably, I think the way, and maybe this is me recommending the motion, is really what it is recommending to deliberate and vote on the supplemental requests, and that we would move it under section C with the other 2 supplemental requests.
Right, because we're still going to vote on them each individually. They'll just be in their own.
They'll each be an individual discussion item and voting. And so correct me if that's not right, Alice, is essentially the motion is to move forward with deliberation and voting on supplemental request 2302 tonight and to put it into subsection C with the other supplemental requests.
Correct.
Alrighty, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Awesome, seconded by Brady, and then we're going to go ahead and vote. I'm going to do a pause for discussion. Awesome. Okay, yeah, go for it, Bjorn.
The part of me that wants to fund things is conflicting with the policy wonk in me, so I do apologize. I believe based on last year, supporting the vote on the day we received the request for, oh gosh, I want to say it was Raices grad. I think that set the precedent that if there's like an urgency, we can vote on things the day of. But Brady made a point about like Club Senate being kind of like a extension. I don't know how to describe it, not directly S&A, and I want to approve it, but honestly, I worry about the precedent that's being set. I'm not going to say anything to stop it, but I do worry all the time, not just about this.
Noted, noted. What's up, Alice?
I'd like to add on to that. I mean, I share in your worry being a fellow deficit hawk, with conservative considerations here when it comes to money, at least. I do like that with this request, they still do the clubs, from my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, Amber or Becca, the clubs still have to come to y'all to make these appeals for the funding after we approved it. So it doesn't, the buck's not stopping here. Is that right?
Yes, I think if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Yeah, so they still have to request funds from this base funded budget either way. Yes, absolutely.
So when they come and request that, they're still gonna give like a reason for those requests, and there's still gonna be, you know, it's not just, so if we approve this, if we even considered it, that would still be something that would still have those protections on it.
That's correct. We review every funding request on a case-by-case basis, and we look at everything that they're asking for money for. So yes, they would still have to go through the same processes.
How it impacts the club members, the purpose of the club, making sure it's not academic requirements, stuff like that. We do a full review.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Do we have any more discussion points before we move into voting? Bye, Amber. Already seeing none. All in favor, go ahead and raise your virtual or actual hand. Good stuff. All right, I see all in favor. So yeah, you guys have it. So we're gonna go ahead and move that into section C, and we'll vote on it alongside the KCWU and campus activities requests. Perfect. 1 second while I pull up the agenda here. We're gonna go ahead and move into our base funding annual reports here. So it looks like first up, we have the Museum of Culture and Environment. Oh, sorry, go for it, Joey, and then Brady.
I was just going to put in here something you all may want to consider, and you do not need to. We have one remaining S&A meeting this quarter, so it's our 1 in 2 weeks, because again, we don't meet during finals week. So we have one more coming up on the, whatever it says at the end of the agenda, March 2nd. Yeah, March 2nd. I know we have annual reports here, and then the last remaining ones would be scheduled there. I think something you all can consider giving the timepieces, because I know we have annual reports and then discussion and voting on each of those three, is it might be something you all might want to consider if there is interest in tabling some of these annual reports or them to move to the next one. Just as a consideration point for the sake of everyone's time and also your mental energy, because we do need everyone to be part of the discussion and voting. And if you all have to leave for any reason, then we won't be able to vote if we don't have quorum. So again, not a necessity at all, but I want to make sure you all are aware that is something you might want to consider and have the ability to do.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joey. We can also, of course, these motions are all what you want to make of them. So this is just an example. We can also meet weekly until the end of the quarter and just do it that way if we wanted to table it and lessen our load a bit. So all up to you, of course. I'm just a tiebreaker out here entertaining the motions. But yeah, with that in mind, we'll go ahead and move forward to Brady and then Brandon.
Joey, you read my mind. and Judy too. I think that just because the program reviews are not a time sensitive issue, still important though, but our funding requests I think are much more time sensitive and have a much bigger impact to the student body. That I'm going to propose that we table all of our program reviews this meeting and hold a special 1 hour meeting next Thursday to make up for not doing the program reviews today, and then continue on with our regular 2 hour meeting in two weeks. So I guess I will now make a formal motion to table all the program review section of our agenda today to a special meeting at the same time and place next week.
Alrighty, we have a motion on the table from Brady. Brandon, did you have another comment on that, or?
Yeah, both Joey and Brady were thinking exactly what I was thinking. I would like to second that motion because the sheer amount of reports we have to go over would put us at a reasonably about 7:30 to 8 ending if we continued with the base funding annual report reviews. So I would like to second Brady's motion.
All right, perfect. So we've got a motion by Brady, second by Brandon. Oh yeah, go for it, Bjorn.
Just going to propose a friendly amendment here. Would it be possible to edit that to move the funding requests ahead of the program reviews and then discuss tabling the program reviews depending on how we feel? Just to leave the door open to consider the program reviews this week.
Brady, do you accept that amendment?
I don't, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I guess it's an unfriendly amendment then, but I get you.
Okay. All right. So do you retract your amendment proposal?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just making sure for parliamentary. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so we've got a motion to move all of the program reviews to a special meeting next week and move forward into funding reviews. We've got a second. Yeah, awesome. Cool. Or do we need to vote on that, Joey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We're going to move into, go ahead, go for it, Bjorn.
Wait, was that all the program reviews?
All of the ones on the agenda for this week.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So to clarify, the motion was to table the base funding annual reports that we have scheduled under Section B this week. Put in place a special 1 hour, and I'm keeping 1 hour on the motion there, 1 hour meeting next Thursday, in which the only agenda item we will really go through is the review of those annual reports, and then continue with our normal process, which was made by Brady, seconded by Brandon.
Exactly. Okay, so perfect. With that in mind, we're going to move forward into voting. Pause for discussion. Jazz hands. Awesome. Okay. All in favor? Awesome. Awesome. Perfect. Seeing none opposed, motion passes. So we're going to go ahead and get those all tabled for next week. Good stuff. And we will go ahead and move forward into, I guess it's still technically point C, but yeah, you all know we're gonna just vote on the funding request. Yeah, go for it, Brady.
Sorry, I did not mean to have my hand raised.
All good, it happens. Okay, perfect. So I believe the first one up is the Student Appreciation Spring Concert proposed by Campus Activities for $10,000. Perfect. Do we just do discussion voting as usual, Joey?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is really the process would be at this point, again, it's deliberation amongst yourselves. Right. And so this is where you all would, if there are questions that you want to consider saying, hey, I'm going this way or that way, this is where you would state either in favor or if you were opposed to it. Again, because it's a public meeting, we want to make sure we're verbally articulating those pieces. You don't need to repeat again. So if Bjorn's like, I'm in favor of this because of X, you don't need to say, I am also in favor of this because of X, just for the sake of brevity on that. But it's a discussion point. At any point, though, someone can make a motion. And your options, again, are motion to fund in the full requested amount, motion to fund at a different amount. motion to deny, or table for a future meeting. If at the end, and I'll set the clock, we have 10 minutes for deliberation. If no one makes a motion and conversation has ended or the time is up, I'll make it, essentially, someone doesn't have to say I motion to not fund or dismiss, but if no motion is made, then it is essentially dead at that point.
Sounds like a plan. So yeah, open for deliberation. Go for it, Alice.
While I am convinced that students would very much benefit and care for this event, I'm not convinced that this would benefit the funding potential or the financial, like, yes, we'll have a lot of students going to the event, but is this going to draw student retention, or is this going to draw student engagement through other means that we have on the table? It sounds like if we were not to fund this, there would be potential for a lot of local bands, local artists, and groups, which I think is really way more worthwhile than any big headliner. I'm way more interested in seeing what Ellensburg has to offer personally. But that's it for me for now.
Sounds good. Next up, we've got Brady, then Brandon.
Thank you for your input, Alice. Just to kind of, and I totally understand those concerns. I think this is an important context that when student government has gone and we're being involved in a lot of conversations regarding retention right now. We continuously speak with the student body, and while our reach is limited, you know, because I mean, there's some probably a decent amount of students that just they come here for academics. They're done at the end of the day. They don't do anything extra than that. But the students that are involved and that we do talk to when we're speaking about retention, one of the things that we get feedback a lot from is a lack of student life. Or that really one of the challenges right now, and I was actually speaking to the Board of Trustees today about this, is that since COVID, or before COVID, we had great student life. And since COVID, we've been building up to gaining that student life. But one of the boundaries that we're facing is a lack of funding for these programs. And so while this specific event, who knows what it will do? Nobody can really say either way. That's, I mean, you'd be a fool to try to guess, but it will, from our feedback that we've received at the Student Senate and the Board of Directors and the ESC, we need more big events. I continuously hear feedback, you know, UW, Wazoo, Western, they bring headliners on, and there's like, I remember Wildfest this time last year. I think WSU brought in Macklemore last year, I think. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I heard. And I heard a lot of students be like, why can't we get somebody like that on campus? So I really do think that there is an interest both to have the local bands, which we have had. I remember in the Cirque Pit earlier this year, there was Tinted Red playing, and I think a couple other nights there was different bands. And that'll still be incorporated into this event. But there's still going to be that big headliner really at the end of the year, which is a crucial time when students are thinking, am I going to come back here? And time again, we see that students want to come back and retain their academics when there's a community, when there's good student life. And so, I mean, we're lacking a lot of that. I mean, we need to build a multicultural center, but I'm not going to dive into that. But I think this will help in that because it is going to help really start bringing back that sense of community. And I'm sorry, I know I've been long-winded, so I'll end here. But from a student government perspective, this is exactly what we need.
Yeah, thank you for that context, Brady. Next up, we have Brandon and then Bjorn.
I wanted to also follow up on Alice and now Brady because he was making a lot of the same points that I was going to make. The 1,100 is not a number to not really to casually toss aside because that's insane turnout for the past couple of years for a central hosted event, and I think Brady mentioned this a little bit, but in the budget they're still trying to get local talent involved as well, where that the additional funding is to up the the level of the production. And I also agree with Brady that I think this is exactly what Central needs.
Good stuff. Good stuff. What's up, Bjorn?
Just to clarify, how much do we have in the pool, not supplemental, and how much are we projected to lose this year, even with the funding cuts?
So the hard answer I'll give you, I don't have the number in front of me. But so as you all may remember, we have a requirement to have more than enough in there, the 1.5 million. We have several million that is in there. Now, I don't know what our current projection is at for the end of the year of how much we'll eat out of it. I know last year, again, took a chunk out of it. I would say with what is sitting on the table here of 60,000 is not gonna, in my professional fiscal opinion, not going to put us in a financial constraint. So I appreciate the question on it. I can make sure to get those numbers. We don't have a funds manager currently because they're on leave, but I will get that information. But I will tell you right now, 60,000 is not gonna put us in a detrimental spot. I think if we were looking at multiple requests for hundreds of thousands of dollars, we might be having a conversation about what that is. I think, again, with that said, you all should still be mindful of, is this what you believe is a beneficial and useful use of student funds for the university community? You don't want to just frivolously be spending. But I will also tell you, and I know Lacey brought this up, we allocated out more than what we collected in fees, but there was a lot, and we've already seen this in the annual reports, there was a lot left on the table that got rolled back. And so one of the big pieces this year is really pushing towards that student engagement aspect of, we want people to use the money they have to do the engagement side of it. That is not me advocating one way or the other on how you all vote, just saying this money, we have the money for this in the reserves. And you should still be mindful of thinking about, is this what you all believe is an appropriate use for that? I know that wasn't a direct dollar figure, Bjorn. I don't have the nice graphs like Lacey normally does.
Definitely. Thank you for that insight, Joey. And yeah, I mean, this whole committee is essentially just making sure that the student input is gathered. So, that's, yeah, perfect. So we got Brady and then Brandon next.
No hard numbers, Bjorn, but maybe this will help ease, and I guess this is important for the whole committee to know. So one of the parts of my job is to meet with Joel Clucking on a fairly regular basis, and we met last Friday, and in a general conversation, because we generally talk about finance and student fees and that type of stuff, I brought up the general budget cuts across the board for the whole university. And so nothing specific to S&A or any part of the university, but he did state that for the university in general, all of our budget cuts are basically unneeded this year because of our salary savings, that the salary savings for, in general, the university have made up for all of the budget cuts. Again, not saying that we don't need to be cautious of our money use or anything like that, but I do think it's important for us to know about that because of the salary savings that the university in general has had, that there's not quite that threat of budget cuts. Still probably going to happen, but just putting that out there. Again, no specific numbers, not specifically talking about S&A. We were talking about the university in general sense, which of course encompasses S&A inherently. I will lose my time, sorry.
All good, Brady. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, we got Brandon.
Sorry. Just trying to be mindful of the 10 minutes we have. I want to put, considering the information Joey provided from Bjorn's concerns, I would like to forward a motion to approve this first, the Amber campus activities, $10,000, of the full amount of the request.
Sounds good. Looks like we've got a motion on the table to approve funds. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Awesome, seconded by Brady. Go ahead and move into a vote. A little Jeopardy music for discussion. Okay, go for it, Bjorn.
I'm real sorry. Is this for campus activities rather than, okay,
Yeah, so we're gonna go, the order for like all of them is gonna be campus activities, KCWU, and then Club Senate, just in the order that we heard them tonight. Yep, any other discussion points? Alrighty, seeing none, I'll go ahead and move into voting. All in favor? Alrighty, looks like, okay, there you are, Bjorn. Perfect, alrighty, so it looks like the motion passes. So go ahead and move forward to the KCWU request for $24,500 for the musical artist fee. Go for it. Yeah, what's up, Brady?
I got distracted. I did not mean to have my hand raised. Somebody walked into the suite. I apologize.
It's okay. Iconic. Go for it, Brandon.
Since both of these motions or requests are interlinked, I think we've had a majority of the discussion that would have been had for this one if they were separate. But if I know that that Alice brought up concerns about local artists, do you still have any concerns about that? Any comments? Just want to make sure.
I mean, I don't have concerns about local artists. My concern was that I don't think we need a headliner.
Does anyone else feel similar to that?
Yeah, go for it, Brandon.
Since there doesn't seem to be much discussion really needed for this, I'd like to put forward a motion to approve the amount requested in full.
Alrighty, we've got a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Sounds like a plan. Seconded by Alice. We'll go ahead and move into voting. Do we have any discussion points before we get started? Alrighty, seeing none, all those in favor? Alrighty, and all opposed? Alrighty, motion passes 4-1. Yay. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and move into the Club Senate supplemental request for $30,000 for club travel. Yeah. So is it Brady then Brandon or okay?
Okay. Because we can have discussion after I make a motion, for the sake of time, I'm going to head and make a motion that we approve we approve $24,500 of the request for additional club funding. Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve $24,500. Do we have a second? Or do we want to hear the discussion point first?
24, 25. I meant 24. 24.
He said 24.5. We would have to have a second before we could have any discussion.
Okay.
Second that.
I just saw Brandon's hand up first, like they were in line, so I wasn't sure if we wanted to hear that first, but okay. Okay, so we have the motion on the table for 24.5. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Sounds like a plan. Got a second from Alice. We'll go ahead and move into voting. Any points of discussion before we get started?
I think that's where we can go to Brandon's question or hand that was up.
Sounds like a plan. Go for it, Brandon.
Yeah, I agree with Brady that for time's sake, we might as well just get to this whole discussion thing. This, I think I'm not alone in feeling this, but this is a heavy. This one's kind of heavy. The fact that if they're going as tracked so far, that they would be running out of funds by the time the next meeting to discuss all this would be. I think an adjusted amount is the appropriate decision. However, I guess I want to understand why we're going for the full 24,500.
Yeah, go for it, Brady, and then Bjorn.
I can provide some reasoning why I motioned for what I motioned. First of all, I mean, honestly, based on the numbers and being in a club myself, but also looking at, we talk to a lot of clubs, we have clubs and talk to us a lot. There's a lot of issues right now with club funding. I mean, the Student Senate discussed this last Monday. We need more club funding, and from what they were saying, in my opinion, doesn't even sound like 30,000 might be enough. I mean, they have a 90,000 base unit. They've had $120,000 already requested. So that's just, if those clubs go back and ask, they'll have enough money to do what's already asked, much less future. The reason that I went specifically with 24,500 to get under that limit of board of trustees requests. That way our students can be served sooner, because we definitely have an urgency to this. I mean, clubs can't wait around, because I mean, conferences happen in 2 months between now and May. By May, the board of trustees approve it, or even if it's just in 3 weeks, stuff happens, and that delays, and the club funding process is not quick. From experience of going through that last year, it is not a quick process. So I think that we need to speed up things on our end to serve our students. But that's specifically why I went with that specific amount. And in all honesty, I think the 30,000 is needed just to avoid delaying it through the board of trustees. But I'll give my time. Thank you.
Yeah, go for it, Bjorn.
It occurs to me, if we wanted to be like a little more conservative with the funds, we could potentially earmark it as to be used for club travel only. I don't see that. I hate to play money police, I don't see that being a huge problem. But if we think that it could be more helpful to earmark it for travel and let the remainder go for assorted material, I'd be willing to support that. I don't feel strongly about it. It's just a compromise solution.
Yeah, go for it, Brady.
The agenda request says that it's under club travel, so I don't think they're asking this for. From my understanding, they're not asking this money to be used for anything but club travel, considering they requested it as supplemental funds for club travel.
Sorry, forgot how to read.
You're good.
Yep, happens.
I mean, be just a simplification on the agenda. I'm just looking at the agenda, so maybe that's not the case.
Yeah, I don't recall if how in depth they went into that on their presentation, but yeah, go for it, Joey.
Well, the only thing I was going to say, I mean, yes, you can do what Bjorn said, where we can be specific. You all, and again, you can recommend to any amount and for any specific thing as long as it's allowable, which I would tell you if it wasn't. The part I would say is without added stipulation or specifics, then it's dictated by what their request is. And I would say this, while the name of the request says Club Travel RSO ICA, if you actually read the details in there, it is the broader part where it is talking about we anticipate an additional $30,000. Clubs can request funds to support their club mission, expand the club experience, and recruit other CWUs to get involved on campus. It talks about events and travel within that. So if it were to be approved in general, just the dollar figure without any additional pieces, they could use it for any requests that come forward to the Funds Council. And so you all can keep it specific to say, hey, I mean, keep it general as that of they can use it for any requests that come forward. If you do say something like, hey, we would like this 24/5, if that's what gets approved, to only be for travel, then that 24/5 can only be used for travel, not for events or programs outside of travel.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification there, Joey. And Becca also just said in the chat that it's classified as club travel, but it would encompass all club experiences such as events, promotion, etc. Just to add that in there. Yeah, next up we have Brady here.
Then with that being said, I would tend to be in favor of Bjorn's idea, recommendation, whatever. So I would entertain.
Do you want me to friendly amendment it, or do you want to amend yourself?
I think a friendly amendment is easier. I'm not sure.
Okay. I'd propose a friendly amendment to Brady's amendment. Oh, I'm sorry, Brandon. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, before we make this amendment, I think the previous discussion or point of information that Joey brought up of that the full $60,000 that was proposed during the course of this meeting, we are more than capable of providing without going under. And I think that because, as Brady brought up before, that the full 30,000 might not even be enough. And I think since we're just trying to get them to get their head above water again, I think that I don't think an amendment is necessary, and keeping it to $24,500 for just their full needs, I think is appropriate.
All right, yeah, good stuff. So we've got a couple of amendments going on. Do you want to kind of clarify how we're organizing that for a minute?
So at this point, there was a motion from Brady, a second by Brandon, which was to provide funding to the RSO, I don't know where I got RSO, for $24,500. The discussion, and this is where Bjorn started to make a friendly amendment, but then realized it was actually Brandon's turn to talk. So there has not been any amendment made currently. So the motion is simply to fund the request in the amount of $24,500, unless there's additional discussion or items or amendments. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Just want to make sure I'm on the same page. Yeah, go for it, Bjorn.
I understand Brady can amend his amendment. I don't see a particularly compelling reason to restrict it to just club travel. I mean, I see some reasons for it, I guess, because club travel is the thing that would probably be needed a little more urgently, but I don't feel strongly about it. Brady, I'm gonna let you do that if you want. I certainly won't stop you.
If the committee does not deem it necessary, then I don't see any reason to amend it. So I'm just gonna leave the motion as it is.
Yeah, fair enough. It was proposed as a compromise amendment, so if it isn't necessary to compromise, yeah.
All right, sounds good. So we're going to stick with the motion in the second as is. All right, good stuff. Do we have any other points of discussion before we move into voting? All righty, with that in mind, all in favor? And perfect, motion passes, funding granted, all that good stuff. Wowza. And just gonna pull up my little agenda here. No old business. Go ahead and move into the second call for public comment. Oh, go for it, Joey.
This is less public comment, but more because there's not another spot for me to say anything. I just want to say you all did a great job tonight. I know this was a new piece that we have not had all year of supplemental requests, let alone dealing with both the presentation, the Q&A, and the deliberation and voting all in one night. I just wanted to say that you all did a great job of being very intentional and thoughtful in what you were hearing and the rationale behind what you're recommending. And so kudos to you all. Next steps is I'll draft up a memo based on the recommendations you all made that'll get sent up to Joel Clucking for review. I know Tommy and Becca are both here, so they're aware. Otherwise, we would normally send notice. We'll let Amber know as well. as a reminder for everyone, while yes, this recommendation carries strong weight, it's not final until we get the approval from Joel with the signature, which should be pretty quickly. And so I can communicate that out to Tommy and Becca and others and Amber as well. So wanted to say thank you all for that. And thank you for our presenters for coming, presenting and sticking with us for this meeting as well.
Yeah, go for it, Bjorn.
Real quick, I guess this is public comment. Again, I have trouble with these kinds of things. Brady, what's the progress on the Diversity and Equity Center graduation ceremony? Because I know we had a little bit of trouble and I wanted to get out ahead of that this year.
Yes. So the ELT allocated $30,000 from their budgets for the 4 ESC grads. I'm blanking on what all 4 are, unfortunately, but we can give strong thanks to Lucha too, who I know spearheaded that with ELT. She was a great partner. If you don't know who Lucha is, she is the interim vice president for student engagement and success. She is here occasionally, but I know she's been busy this week. Yes, the funding is approved. I don't foresee at this moment any need for S&A to supplement. I don't think that's going to be an issue. ASCW BOD budget still has, that's also one of the reasons that we're kind of hesitant to jump in with that, is the BOD is still allocating money towards making sure that we can get the ESC grads, since that's already a commitment we've already made, up and going. So yes, I think we're good to go. So it's really exciting, and we are very happy that the ELT were able to make that allocation. So, and thankful. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Judy.
Go for it. Yeah, thank you for the update. That's amazing. For those of you who don't know, the graduations, they're all the ESC graduations, right, Brady? Yeah, so that's going to be Black grad, Lavender grad, which is for LGBTQIA+ students, Filipino graduation, and did I already say Black grad? I think those are the 4. So what's that?
Latinx.
Oh yeah, Raíces grad. Yep, that's the one. Yep. Okay. I thought I said that one first. So okay. But yeah, that's really exciting news. Very, very exciting. I think Raíces grad went from like a matter of like 10 or so students to like I think a couple, like just over or just under 100. So yeah, that's really big news. Very exciting. Anyway, go for it, Joey.
Well, what I was going to add is on that note is ELT, and I woke up the baby as I startled her. ELT actually provided that $30,000 for our Equity Service Council graduations, not only this year, but continued funding moving forward. So I don't have an end date on that, but was providing base funding for that. In addition, I've already talked with Mal, our interim director of Diversity and Equity Center, because similar to what Brady shared, is there was already a planned commitment to provide any financial support from that area. And so really, the intent from my conversation with Mal is to avoid the ESC orgs themselves having to contribute any of their money. And so the DEC being able to partner to offset if there are any additional costs specifically this year that go over that 30,000. So just to put it in context, the request was actually for 28,000, which was like, hey, this is how much it would cost. And they gave us a great rounding to 30,000. Here's the amount. We'll just cover the whole piece. Which was fantastic. So huge shout out and thank you to them, and very excited for our ESC orgs.
Yep. And I know that a lot of them are starting registrations for those graduations. So pop on, I think, Instagram, I think that is where I've seen a couple of them, or feel free to reach out to Mariah Minyara. She does all of the ESC work, so she can totally get you connected. So awesome. Good stuff. Any more public comments for second call? Alrighty, seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. If you do it quick, we'll be ending at 7:11.
I'll second that.
All right, we didn't have a motion on the table.
So Alice is making the motion.
I will make a
Perfect. Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Perfect. Seconded by Brandon. Meeting adjourned tonight at 7:11 p.m. We love to hear it.
Have a great week all. Again, keep in mind, we did put in place a special meeting next Thursday for 1 hour. Jessica and I will work to send out that notice and stuff to you all and update the website, but we'll see you all next Thursday. Thank you very much.
Hey, y'all.
Good night, all.